Hey, thanks for stopping by my channel. Today we're going to do some watercoloring. We'll be using this brand new image by Sassy Cheryl Stamps called Bee-lieve in Blessings. I'll put a full list of supplies I use down in the description box in case you'd like to do some shopping. I went ahead and printed my image on some Arches 140-pound cold press watercolor paper using my laser printer. I'm also going to be using my Winsor Newton 24 portable palette and a number 4 silver black velvet brush. Right here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mix some paints that I want to use for the sky. So I started out by adding a little bit of black into my palette, and I decided that was way too dark. So I added a little dab of water, and then I put a little dab of that paint over there in the paint, and it's called lamp black. And then the blue was Cerulean blue, and then I tried it out on my piece of scratch watercolor paper before I got started so that I could see what color it was. I'm going ahead and I'm just wetting down my paper. When you wet down your paper, you want to make sure that it gets a shiny appearance on the paper so that the paper has soaked up enough water that when you come back with your ink, it will just automatically blend out on the line that of water you've already put on there. I was really careful to try not to get any water on my bear, because wherever the water is where the paint is going to go. So make sure that you don't get any on your bear, and the water will just make the paint spread away from his little body. Isn't he cute? And then if it doesn't spread like you'd like, you can always take your paintbrush and get it wet and then drag it out into the space that you want it to go in again. Here I decided I needed a little bit darker, so I just tested on my swatch card so I could see how dark it was before I added it to my image. It's always a good idea if you didn't mix enough or you mix a new color to try it out first and make sure it's a color you want before you paint it on your painting, and you're pretty much stuck with it after that. You can, I guess, get it wet if it's still wet and then dab it up with your paper towel. So I wandered off, I let it dry completely, and then I come back. So I'm going to go ahead and now we're going to paint the grass. So for the grass, we're using Hooker's Green Deep, and I mixed it with some water to dilute it so that it would be a little bit lighter than what it was. I don't want it to go on there full strength, so I went ahead and diluted it a little bit. And then again, I just added the water at the bottom of my page, and then I'm just going over it and dabbing on some of that green paint that we mixed up. And sorry, it was Hooker's Green Dark. Then I added a little bit more of my paint, my dark green, to that little dab that I had in there so that I could darken it up a little bit, because it's still not as dark as I wanted. And here I'm looking at it, deciding, I let it dry. I wandered off again, I let it dry. And here I added a little bit of that diluted black I had in there just so we could give him a little bit more of a shadow underneath of his body, because he needs something underneath of him so that he will look like he's laying down and it's not all the same color. So anyway, if you're enjoying the video so far, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. It really helps me out. So after I let that dry, I'm coming back in here and we're adding water to my palette, and I'm trying to decide what color I want to color my bear. So I'm mixing up some colors here. So I used yellow ochre and raw umber, and then I added some more black to my palette, and I'm just kind of mixing that in there, and we're going to try it out. I'm not really loving that, so I added a little bit more of my yellow ochre onto it, and I still didn't love it, so I decided to go with the really diluted one. So first off, I didn't get the bear wet. I decided to just dry brush it on there and see how that went. And if there was a big puddle, I just came back in and pushed the ink that was puddled up down towards the bottom of the bear so that it would be down at the bottom. I tried to be careful going around the bee and the flowers. I ended up painting right over the leaf, and I did get a little bit on his shirt, but I went back and dabbed it off with my paper towel so that it wouldn't be on there in the end. I'm just kind of spreading all that ink around on my bear so he'll be all the same color. And then I dried him with my heat dryer because I'm impatient and I can't wait. And then I'm coming back with a second coat that I added a little bit of black to, and I'm going in and adding a little bit more shadow to my bear. I'm going to try to leave his snout and his belly the lighter color so that they really stand out. There I got my paintbrush rinsed off, and I'm just going in with some water, and I'm kind of dabbing it along the edge of that harsh line so that it will soften it all up. Then I ran off, and I came back later after it was all dry, and I'm mixing up a little bit more paint. That time I added a little bit of burnt umber to my paint to give it a little bit more of a reddish brown color. I'm coming in again, and I'm just trying to add a little bit more shadows to my bear. He's looking a little pale and pasty there, so I've decided he needed to be a lot darker than what I had. I went around the bottom of his leg and the bottom of his arm, and then I'm coming back with just water on my brush, and I'm softening that, and I tend to wipe my brush off a couple of times while I'm softening it, because while you're jabbing it along that ink, your brush is picking up ink, and you want to make sure that you wipe it off periodically, or you're just spreading it around the paper instead of softening that line. So softening there again, and we're letting that poor little bear, he's still looking kind of pasty. So I'm coming back in and adding yet another layer of paint. We're going to let that, see how nicely it kind of spread out there. It was still wet, so it just kind of bled out away from my little line there and made a nice shadow line. Adding a little bit more to his legs and his arm. And then I'm going to go up here, and we're going to mix a little bit more color. I decided it needed to be a little bit more red, so I'm adding a little bit more color in there. Dabbing it off, and I'm going around his leg and over the top of his arm, so they will have a little bit of shadow in there, but I'm still leaving his belly pretty light. Then I let it dry, and then I came back and I'm adding yet another color of my mixed up paint, still trying to darken him up. I feel that you can't really see him, he's not really standing out, so I'm going ahead and just dabbing more color along the shadow line. I decided his leg needed to be a little bit more defined, so I kind of went along the top edge, and then I went over like half of his bottom of his cute little feet. We'll darken up his face so it's got a little more color. I went ahead and grabbed my heat tool there, I dried it real quickly, and I'm coming back in and mixing up a little bit more paint. I added a little bit more black in there so that it would be a lot darker along the bottom of his body. Since he's laying down, the very back of his body is going to be the darkest. So I blended that in, and then I went in with just my water there, and I'm softening that really harsh line. I don't love that, but you could leave it if you like that look. And every time I put a color on there, I do let it dry, or I blast it with my heat tool so that it will be dry before I start another coat. If you just continue putting it on over the wet paint, it will just continue to spread all over the place, and it won't get that nice blended or second color look. So you do need to make sure in between colors you let it dry completely, go do something else, or get out your heat tool and then dry it that way. So now we're going to mix up some red for his shirt. So for that I used Indian red and cadmium red deep. And I also put a little dab of that's orange. So that's cadmium red pale. And it's still pretty orange. I like that third one, so that's what we're going to go with. Then for my shadows, after I let it dry, I do come back in and add a little bit of my black paint in there, in my mixed paint, so that it will be a little bit darker. So I got his shirt completely wet, and I'm just dabbing the mixed paint onto his shirt. I got a little too much at the top, so I got my paintbrush wet, and I'm just kind of picking it up with my paintbrush and depositing it onto my paper towel. Got quite of a puddle there at the bottom, so I dried my paintbrush off, and then I'm using the paintbrush to suck that ink up. Then I gave it a quick blast with my heat tool, and for the center of the flower I used cadmium yellow, and then I used Chinese white to do the little petals. For my bee, I'm also doing the stripes with my cadmium yellow, and then I'm giving his nose a little dab of black. And I couldn't see his eye very good anymore, so I'm going to color over the top of his eye with my little bitty 00, what is that paintbrush? It's a 00 Grumbacher watercolor brush. I really like it. It's got a really fine point. But I went ahead and penciled his eyebrow and his eye back in so you could see it when he was laying down. I added a second coat to his shirt, trying to darken up that bottom edge because it seems like it needs to be a little bit darker. And then I got carried away, so I'm kind of dabbing along the edge there so it's not quite so harsh. And then I'm going to go ahead, and now that the bee has dried, you want to make sure that the bee dries before you come in and you add your stripes next to the yellow ones. Otherwise, they're just going to bleed together and make a big, huge mess. So always make sure it dries. And then I'm cleaning my brush off, and I'm going to go ahead and paint the cute little leaves that are on the flower. I just used some of the leftover mixed Hooker's Green dark paint that I had up there. Nothing fancy, I just colored them all the way in. And now I'm using my Chinese white paint to color in those flowers. The petals. I did go over them with the brown, but when I went over them with the white paint, it was fine. I didn't mind that they were a little discolored, but the white paint did a nice job of making them an off-white color for the flowers. Then I thought I maybe would put some of this red inside of his ear, but I hated it, so I used my paper towel after I got it wet and kind of dabbed it off so that it was a lot lighter. I like it to be a light pink color, but I didn't add any more water to my paint than I should have to lighten it up. Now I decided that my bear needs a little bit more color, so I'm mixing up a little bit more blue for my sky. and I added a little bit of my black in there so that it's kind of a grayish color. I'm just going around the edge of my little bear and I'm darkening him up just a little bit more. I thought he was a little too light, so I thought he would definitely need a little bit more color up there. This cute little sentiment, or this cute little stamp, if you buy it over at Sassy Cheryl's, also comes with some sentiments. So when you're printing them out, you could put the sentiment right onto your card so it's all one piece, or you can always print it out on another sheet and then attach it later. I didn't do that this time. I thought I would just leave him without a sentiment so that I could stamp my own later on. Here I decided I didn't like that line that was underneath my bear, so I went in and got it wet, and I'm just adding some more of my green paint. And there he is. He's all done. Isn't he super cute? So I'm going to go ahead and remove my tape that I have on here, and we can see what he looks like. Then we're just going to go ahead and fold our card and give it a quick crease with our bone folder. If you would like to see some more close-up videos and more details on the card, you can head over to the store blog, and I put a link to that down in the description box. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit the little bell next to it so you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Right about now, you should be seeing a couple more videos I thought you might be interested in watching. If you are, just click on any one of those and it'll take you straight there. Otherwise, I hope you are having a fabulous day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.